Hey there, in today's video, I want to highlight how Jesus unites across social status. I mean, we're in an interesting moment as a nation where I'm seeing so much finger pointing towards this particular social group is the problem, or this particular social group is the problem that needs to get fixed, and blah, blah, blah. Jesus challenges us to see beyond those social lines. And I really want to highlight that just with his 12 disciples. So let's start out with Simon. Simon was called the Zealot. So he would have been basically he would have been a trained Jewish soldier whose life duty was to take out any Roman that he possibly could without getting in trouble. So think of the Zealots in Judaism as a group of guerrilla warfare soldiers who had hopes of Israel taking over Rome and becoming a great, amazing kingdom. So that's Simon. Then you had a bunch of Jewish working guys. Peter is listed as the only disciple who's married, and he's like a fisherman, and a bunch of the other disciples are also fishermen. So, kind of your average Joe. And then there was one disciple who I'm sure people thought Jesus was crazy for inviting into his inner circle. And that disciple would have been Matthew, because Matthew and Zacchaeus were way too similar. So both of them were tax collectors. And tax collectors were seen as Roman sellouts. They could tell people oh, you owe Rome 25 denarii in taxes, when they really only owed Rome 10. And then the tax collectors got to pocket that profit that they had made. So basically, tax collectors were at free will to abuse other Jews financially however they pleased. They were hated, they were wealthy, they were upper class, they were well educated when most other people were not. And so Jesus sees this Matthew, Jewish tax collector dude, and says, hey, you, follow me. And I can't imagine how awkward that first hangout dinner together must have been, where here you have a zealot who's trained to take out Roman government officials and soldiers. And then you have all these working class Jewish guys. And then you have Matthew, who would have been an educated, wealthy tax collector, sellout to Rome. And Jesus makes them all some kind of functioning, happy family by the end of it. And I want to point that out because Jesus didn't discriminate based on socio-economic status, based on occupation, based on wealth, based on anything like that. He saw all of them as equals and said, join the party. And that's so hard for us to do today. And yet it's exactly how we could start to see some unity happening in our communities and in our churches. So even today, what would it be like for you to consider having coffee or having a meal with somebody who is vastly, vastly different from you? Just as a practical comparison for me, as a therapist who is offering free services to families who desperately need it, it's my comparison would be to find somebody who works for an insurance company that makes care more difficult for people to access. That's what that could look like for me. What could that look like for you today? And how could we foster more unity in our communities by following in the footsteps of Jesus?